Sleep is not safe. At times, dreams may be more dangerous than reality. Lucid nightmares, for example, are as inescapable and traumatizing as the worst fears of the real world. The pain that we feel can be as real as in normal life, and sometimes when we die in our nightmares, it can indeed have real-life consequences. Like a bad trip, a seemingly contrived or halcyon dream can quickly spiral out of control. The first and foremost cause of this is in change of perception within the dream. Without doubt, paranoia is the greatest catalyst of fear within the turning of the mind's eye. I must at this moment apologize for my random wanderings upon the subject and explain the reason for my musing. It is my most soul belief that every human has a dream world as real and as tangible as the world we live in. I refuse to believe that I'm the only one to have lived, to have suffered under this condition of lucidity, of ethereal permanence within the mind. I would also like to state that this is not another fictional story that I am presenting, but a rather real and terrible event that has plagued the every waking and sleeping hours of my life. Everything I say in this video comes from what I can draw from my memory. It started as a young child. At the age of perhaps 1 to 2 years old, I had my first lucid dream, if that is the correct term. Before me was a gate of wrought iron. It was of the Art Nouveau style, with organic curves bent and twisted into the metal. There was a deep black fog covering the cold, biting air around me. I remember leaning forward and touching the cold iron and having pushed the left side of this great metal barrier open. It left pitch black ash upon my hand when doing so. Walking through the gate, I looked up to see a large figure looming over me. All I remember before waking up is seeing the figure, red against the fog of the night, extend a large, talon-covered hand towards me. I woke up crying in my bassinet. There was another dream I had, some years later, perhaps at the age of 7, of being in the depths of the water. It was the murkiest black, and I was sinking, drowning, my lungs filling up with liquid, oily ocean water. I was being consumed by the ocean. In an attempt to swim, flailing and kicking around, I flipped around in the water to see a large form emerging from the depths of the darkness, the last of my air leaving my lungs. I witnessed it swimming closer to me. It had the body of a whale and the jaws of a crocodile, a nightmare from prehistoric times, a monster whose mouth was lined with endless rows of curved, vicious fangs. It spread its jowls, and in a single, fluid motion was upon me. The worst part was that the dream didn't end there. I could feel its teeth digging into me, shaking around like a rag doll. I could feel every drop of blood leaving my bones. I fell further into the darkness of the throat of the sea monster, into complete blackness. I woke up in pain, a numbness filling my stomach and arms. I coughed up fluid from my lungs. I had, for a while in my sleep, become the very definition of pain itself. It was not long before these types of dreams became more frequent. I have fallen from buildings, felt every bone in my body break in agony, explored fields flooded with drowned and bloated corpses. They say you can't smell in your sleep or count to 10, but I have. I can smell the stench of fresh graveyard soil, the choking odor of burning, rusted shackles, and most frequently, the scent of my own flowing blood. I have counted my fingers as they were torn from my hand, one by one. The number of bodies in an open grave, and the keys of a shattered piano. Every time I dream, it is in the most photorealistic manifestation, equivalent in detail as life itself. This is not to say that all my dreams are completely dark. I've come to realize that every time I dream, it happens within a world riff with continuity, and it is all linked by a single road within my subconscious. What happens in the dream world merely depends where I am within it. I walked upon this road, and I stood again by the seashore near where I was eaten whole, and seen the beast eyeing me from beneath the murkiness. I have wandered by the sides of this long highway, surrounded by forests and graves, that recurring place that connects all of my dreamscapes. At times, I can get a glimpse of shrouded figures in the woods, wearing robes dyed red and black, all walking in the same direction towards parts unknown. I once sat with my dead brother, alive and well, sat with him on a hilltop and drank with him while watching people fly kites off in the far distance. No, the land in my subconscious is not entirely imaginary. Places where I have been and lived that exist within the real world also exist within the one in my mind, although they are corrupted, twisted, changed with their transitions into my consciousness. I had a dream that I was back in a small town that I used to live in. Everything was so wrong. Cracks and chasms fill the land. The place that was once a hometown was now home to no one, an absolutely barren wasteland. The elementary school stood derelict and lifeless in the background. Torn asunder, pieces of it lay strewn about. I looked up to the sky to see floating pieces of earth and houses floating in the air. Blood covered everything. Blood and pieces of what used to be parts of people. The sky itself was painted in shades of blood red, with gray clouds framing what appeared to be a large black circle in the sky, not unlike a total solar eclipse. I wandered the empty streets, feeling alone in this wasteland. I felt that somewhere in this hellhole, there must be someone still alive. Some person that could tell me what the hell was going on. Walking down the remains of country roads, I stopped when I found life, if you could call it such. I don't think you could. They were a grim facsimile of human beings. They weren't quite living, not quite dead. They weren't people. Their skin was burnt to charcoal. Their eyes were glowing bright red. And they were hungry. Staggering down the road, they came after me in droves. They were shadow people, inhabiting a shadow town. They opened their mouths, lined with shards of what used to be teeth, blackened, rot remains of tattered cheeks. They set upon me with angry wails, intent upon consuming me. Their mouths opened, dripping with black, vicious fluid. I ran. Through the empty streets I bolted, pursued by an army fit for Satan himself. Several times I felt their hands graze my back, and the further I ran, the more of the shadows followed. I rushed through the woods, out of the town, further and further into the wilderness I wandered. I knew I was dreaming, but I could not make myself run any faster, and I was running out of breath. At last, I collapsed on the ground in a dry ditch, my fate sealed. I was set upon by the monsters. I died quickly, as the first of the horrors dug its teeth deep into my neck. My mind went black, into a blissful blankness. For a time, I was one with nothingness. Then I woke up. I awoke in the same state I had been during my dream, tired and out of breath. My chest was in pain. Every part of my body was in pain. I wanted to still be dead. This was not the worst dream I would have, and far from being the most painful or the most frightening. I would say the worst vision grounded in lucidity I experienced came about a month afterwards. I've had this dream 3 times since, and each time it becomes progressively worse. In each variation, I am a child. My mother and father are shopping at a store, browsing the aisles and departments of a deceptively small-looking mall. Being a child, I am short, standing up to the height of my parents' waist. The mall seems relatively small at first, and we wander from store to store. Eventually, I'm separated from my parents, when a large crowd in front of me cuts between me and them. I run off in the direction I believe my parents to be, only succeeding at becoming more and more lost. As I wander the shops, the most peculiar phenomenon takes place. All the color drains from the world. It's a slow and steady drain. For hours I search the mall, and the further I search, the larger the place becomes. For miles I wander, further and further into oblivion. As I wander the departments, it becomes apparent that another peculiarity has manifested itself. Looking around, I see that time itself has frozen still. Shoppers browsing the aisles have been stripped of all movement, all life. They're stuck, trapped in their motions. I see one man reaching for the products on the shelves, another man halfway through an elevator door. I pass by a woman who is in the process of spilling her coffee. The individual drops, hovering in the air before my eyes. I walk around the corner into a shop that sells glassware. Browsing the aisles, I notice that the bottles and glasses are twisted and strange-looking, abstract, the seeming product of hallucinations. I am compelled beyond my own morbid curiosity to head further still into this strange place, to see further the strange creations. I stop. Manifested before me is the most beautiful mirror I have ever seen. It is trimmed in gold, with organic curves embedded with diamond chunks. It is a work that stands a good 8 feet into the air. Something within me moves me forward. I can't help but peer into the mirror. It's me, but I am horrendously disfigured. My eyes are purest black, my flesh is rotting from my fingers, blood pours from my mouth and nose. What disturbs me, though, is not the dark reflection of myself, but rather the reflection of what's standing right behind me. Her skin was pure white, with not a shade of life, a checkless mouth lined with rows of needles instead of teeth, spread into a deep, permanent grin. There were no eyes, and I could see something squirming deep in the recesses of its eye sockets. As I still stared into the mirror, it lifted its hand and put it on my shoulder. Long blackened nails on long bony fingers grazed my cheek. She leans her face closer down to me and whispers with a foul breath into my ear, "Run!" As these words reach me, swarms of maggots burst from the face of the monster, spreading down its long arms and start spreading across my body. I fling the arms off of me and sprint across the store, past crowds of dozens of people. I can hear it behind me, keeping pace, laughing maniacally. As I pass the crowds of people, some of their bodies explode into showers of fluid and gristle. Others melt with age and rot. As I rush along the storefronts, I see my family walking in front of me. I rush to them, hoping to find some form of protection in my family's arms. As they turn to look at me, I scream aloud as they too are blown into pieces right before my eyes. In shock, I fall to my knees on the floor, just sitting there in absolute horror as my very own mother decomposes right in front of me, screaming and writhing with pain. Maggots flood out of the remains of my father and consume the rest of my mother. I feel a cold hand on my shoulder and am turned around from this gruesome sight. The tall, pale, thin creature stands before me, breathing into my ear. "You should have kept running." She proceeds to lift her hand to my throat and slits it from ear to ear with her sharp fingernails. Leaning down, the creature proceeds to open its needle-filed mouth and bite deep into my midsection. I fall backwards onto the floor. Unable to move, I just lay back, staring at the ceiling as my body is torn limb from limb, my organs being slowly pulled from me like a gutted pig. Tendons and parts of my ribs ripped free from my chest. Lastly, the beast digs its long fingers into my chest cavity and pulls out my still beating heart. As it tears it apart in its mouth, the world disappears into dark. Death is cold, and for but a singular moment that stretches beyond the fabric of time and space, I stop being. I cannot think, feel, nor remember. And this is the way it stays for an eternity. When I wake up, I feel no refreshment from my rest. Instead, I have woken to a world devoid of value. I know I will have the dreams again. Sometimes, when I'm tired, I can hear her voice in my ear telling me to sleep and whispering the unknown drivings of insanity into my mind. I shake my head and down more caffeinated drinks. No longer can the night offer me refuge from life's exhaustion. No longer are my dreams restful, or they a place willingly would go. To this day, I fight sleep and only let myself fall when I'm certain that it will be dreamless.